2025 Environmental Advisory Committee Speaker Series. We should try to do 2 or 3 of these a year. We've already done one. We did a tree Pittsburgh class, and that was well attended, just like this. We're going to do tonight's class, and we're going to do one more in the fall. So I'm Jeff Petro. I'm the current chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee. I'm joined by other members of the EAC, by some council members, and many concerned citizens. So thank you, welcome, and we're pleased that you're here. What we want to do is we want to kick this off tonight, and this is very, very fundamental, because this really leads into what we're trying to do with retreeing or tree canopy McCandless. So we've had a tree Pittsburgh class in the spring. We're going to do a tree tenders and a tree adoption in the fall being October 18th. So if you haven't seen it yet online, we have a sign up for tree tenders. I think we have about 10 more positions open. That's on the McCandless site. And we also have a tree adoption. And the Township of McCandless, the commissioners, the management, very, very generously paid for all this. The tree tenders course is free. The adoption is free. And so we've already given away, we want to give away 90 trees, and we've already given away 7. So the forms for that are on the board out there. And if you're interested in attending or interested in adopting a tree, then grab these forms. There's a few left in each category, so we welcome that. This presentation tonight is fundamental to that. We can't retree McCandless without getting a hold of the deer overpopulation. So a recent Tree Pittsburgh survey from 2015 to 2020 showed that McCandless had lost 33,000 trees. That's through attrition, that's through disease, that's through people don't want to deal with them anymore. That's through certainly progress and building of McCandless Crossing and different reasons. But we think there is room and there's effort and there's community interest in putting the trees back in McCandless for all the right reasons. So fundamental to that is what we're going to do tonight. We're going to kick it off. We're going to lean into that into 2026 as we go into McCandless 175. We want to really build this up. We want to get the community involved. We want to get the community telling us when they plant a tree, putting that online. We're going to actually put something online that's going to give a pin. So if you plant a tree, we do a pin. So we start to count these. We want to make this a big effort of the EAC. And so we hope that this community, this caring community, could join with us and help us with that after we learn more about how we can be successful in that. Because we can't do that without this. Lastly, I just want to mention that April 25th, this is something I'm always going to mention, April 25th of next year is our roadside cleanup. And that has become a big event for McCandless. We went from 50 people to 70 people to now 130 people on a Saturday morning for 3 hours. Police coverage, DPW coverage, all council members join us, town management join us, all EAC members join us. It's a big deal, and we'd love for you guys to join us with that. So thank you for listening, and I'm going to turn this over to my fellow member, Ken Allshouse.
Good evening. I'm Ken Allshouse. I'm a member of EAC. My original degree is in forest science, so this is a subject that's pretty near and dear to my heart. So why are we talking about deer management? I think we all love to see deer until they're in front of the hood of our car. And last year we had the archery hunters harvested about 60 deer, and on McCandless Roads, which doesn't include McKnight and 19, over 160 deer were picked up. So that doesn't include deer that ran back into the woods and expired. So we've got a lot of deer running around. We also love to see those 2 ponds frolicking in our backyard until we realize Mom just ate our whole garden. That same thing is going on in the woods. It's not only in your yard that they're eating everything, it's all of our native flowers and shrubs are gone in the woods. If you look in our woods, anything that there is there now is Japanese silkgrass and Japanese barberry. Everything else has basically been wiped out by the overpopulation of deer. So we've been doing a deer management program for several years of trying to increase the archery hunting and the number of we use suburban whitetail hunters to do that. And so if you have a property that, particularly if it's 5 acres or more, that you're concerned about deer, check with them, and they can get a hunter on there to harvest the deer. And none of the deer is ever wasted. Any excess deer that somebody harvests goes to share the harvest and goes to the food banks. So nothing's wasted. So with nothing further, I'm going to introduce Jeannine Fleegle. She is a wildlife biologist with Pennsylvania Game Commission. She's been active in 3 states managing deer for the last 25 years. And so she's got a slideshow presentation for us, and then there'll be questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to sit over here in the background. I have some slides, so you won't be looking at me because I'm nothing to look at, but you can look at my slides. And if you're ready. Okay, so I do a lot of talks in these kinds of communities because there's often push and pull. You know, I love deer. I don't love deer, you know, eating my garden or things like that. So it can be quite the flashpoint in a lot of communities. So do I have to say next? Can I have next, please? There we go. Okay, so the whitetail deer is our state animal, and it is probably our most successful conservation story that we have in the state. Back around, you know, the 1800s, we had probably not very many deer. In fact, that's how the Game Commission was born. 1895, the Game Commission was formed because there were no deer left in the state. I know that is hard to believe, but it is very, very true. In fact, if you saw a deer, it actually made the newspaper. So all of us reported the deer that we saw today, there would be no room for any other news in the paper, which I don't know, that might not be a bad thing. But yes, very, very successful conservation effort in Pennsylvania. And it's kind of like the pendulum has swung all the way to the other end, from hardly none to a whole lot. Next, please. So why? Now we have deer in our state, and the thing about whitetail deer is they are incredibly adaptable. They can live anywhere. They can live anywhere except water. So I have photos of them in downtown Pittsburgh. They feel at home in our most wild forests in the central part of the state. They feel at home right here in suburbia. It has everything that they need. So deer just, I tell people deer just do deer. That's what they do. They just go about their business doing what deer do. They're not out to make your lives miserable, and they certainly don't want to get hit by a car. So, but in these places, deer can adjust to almost anything, especially our behavior. They get habituated to our activities every day. And one of the things that deer are really, really good at is making more deer. So we all know that. Next slide, please. And of course, every year we have 2 more. Adult does have twins. Sometimes they have triplets. And they're super, super cute when they're little, but they all get bigger, kind of like puppies and kids, right? They're cute when they're little, but everything grows up. So they have twins every year, and that is the norm. Next slide, please. And with increased exposure to our activities, they feel very at home living in our yards. I've had people complain to me that the kids can't play in the yard because there's too much deer poop in the yard. So I have heard it all. And they are really, really comfortable living close to us. But that doesn't mean they still aren't wild animals. If you approach them, they're still going to act like a deer. They're still going to run away. But if they know that you get out every day and go get the mail at a certain time, have you tried to touch one yet?
They don't run. They just
But you haven't tried to touch one yet, have you?
They look mean at you.
Yeah, they do. They do look mean. And don't get in between a doe and her fawn, because then you'll get stepped on or stomped at, and that's not fun either. But this is the kind of situation that is pretty common in these areas because deer just love people, right? They think they do. Next slide, please. And of course, with this comes concerns. Concerns about, of course, deer vehicle collisions are always a big one. It's damage to property and it's very, very dangerous for people. And that is, I will say, that is my biggest fear driving on Pennsylvania roads is the deer that inhabit the state. And I work in deer management. So yes, it is quite the concern. And while they are adaptable, they are really not too savvy at looking both ways before they cross the road. Next slide, please. And so they're adaptable, they're prolific, and they love to eat. So I like to say that deer are really, really good at two things. They're really good at making more deer, and they're really good at eating. Is anybody a fan of Jaws? It's the 50th anniversary this year of the most fantastic movie ever. And one of the lines is, you know, they swim and they eat and they make little sharks. Deer do those things too, except they don't, well, they do swim, but they're not going to be swimming around here. But they eat and they make little deer. That is their job. That's all they do. Next slide, please. So if we look at that, if you want to look at it in terms of sheer bulk, what a deer can eat. So it's usually based on weight. So smaller the deer, the less they eat, larger the deer, the more they eat. And of course, these are just rule of thumb ballpark because they can eat more at certain times of the year and less at certain times of the year, depending what's on the landscape. But that just gives you an idea of the sheer volume that one deer can eat. A day. Yes. But that's kind of like an average over the entire year. Of course, in the wintertime, they're eating less than that. Summertime, they're eating more than that. Next slide, please. And then you have things like this. Now, depends on your perspective here, but this is, if you want to walk, this is a great place to walk. There's nothing that's going to get in your way. This was taken obviously in the wintertime, but even in a healthy forest, there should be a lot more understory. It should be brushy. You shouldn't be able to see for what seems like a mile. And a friend of mine or a colleague would say when he showed this picture that if you're a deer living here, you better pack a lunch because there's nothing even for deer to eat. So this is extreme damage, but this is what can happen. And it doesn't mean that there aren't things still left in the seed bank. There are, but they don't have an opportunity to grow because if you're a deer and you're hungry, you have to eat and you eat what's growing. Next slide, please. And of course, deer will eat just about anything. I'm sure many of you have come across those less preferred lists online about what you can plant in your yard. Yeah, that's a whole lot of nothing, right? Because if a deer is hungry enough, they are going to eat it. I just was relating a paper that was just published from Union County, New Jersey, that the deer there are eating Japanese knotweed and actually affecting the growth because that's what they have to eat there. So, and most people, of course, do not like landscaping done by deer. They usually don't have that attention to detail that most homeowners like. Next slide, please. So where's the Game Commission in all this? The Game Commission is responsible for managing deer. We are the state wildlife agency. And as the state wildlife agency, we have been basically named stewards. We're stewards of the wildlife resources in this state. So the wildlife resources in Pennsylvania belong to everybody. We're just responsible, or we act in the citizenry's best interest to manage these species. With that being said, we cannot solve every conflict that comes up between wildlife and the people that live here. We just don't have the capacity to do that. We manage deer through hunting. That has served us incredibly well over the 100+ years that we have been in charge of managing deer. And for states, every state in the country does it this way, but we're still incredibly lucky because we have a very healthy hunter population, which a lot of states don't have. So we are still fortunate that we can do that and harvest animals to keep them at least in meeting the goals that we have for the statewide deer management program. But when it comes to communities or small localized management actions, it depends on the community because every community is not the same. So me coming in here and saying, you need to do this, this, and this, it'll solve your problem. That's not going to apply to Ross Township or Swickley or any other community. It really has to depend, or it depends on what you want as a community. And apparently you want trees to grow from what I hear. Next slide, please. And I always like to talk about deer conflicts and what a deer conflict is. So, there's this buck and he's in a soybean field and he's having his lunch or dinner. And I always ask people, is this a conflict? And some people immediately shake their heads, yes. And other people go, well, maybe. And it is a well, maybe question, because if you're a farmer and you've planted this field to harvest to make a living, then it is surely a conflict. If you are a hunter and have planted this field for deer to use and other wildlife, then it's not a conflict. So it really depends. It just illustrates how every perspective is a little bit different when it comes to deer and what that means. So not a whole lot of people have a tolerance for no deer, and not a whole lot of people have a tolerance for super high deer populations, but it's in between where we usually have that conflict with different groups saying, I want more, other groups saying, I want less, and so on and so forth. So it's finding that middle ground. Next slide, please. So I always tell people, when you want to discuss deer management, you need to have a plan. Because what ends up happening is people throw out all these solutions, but they haven't defined what the problem is. So what's the problem in your community? Thankfully, you have an advisory, environmental advisory committee that helps to define what these problems are and where you want to go from there. But these are just some common problems that are seen. So there's deer vehicle collisions, there's invasive species issues, there are, landscape damage, and then there's the whole, deer versus hammock that just doesn't bode well. I'm sure you've had similar situations in this community where a deer just gets itself in trouble and things need to occur to get it out of trouble. So these are just some things that can occur and how you as a community can define what your goals are. Are your goals fewer complaints for landscape damage? Is it fewer deer vehicle collisions? Is it more trees growing? Those are the things that you should use to guide your deer management. Not necessarily a particular number, but when you see fewer deer vehicle collisions, when you see things growing, that's when you know you have reached your goals. Next slide, please. And there are a lot of tools out there. Again, I encourage everybody to have a deer management plan so you can define your goals and what steps you're going to take to reach those goals. That way, everybody in the community knows this is the goal, these are the goals, and here's what we're going to do to reach those goals. So there's no question. And there are a lot of resources out there. There's one on the Game Commission website. Anybody can read this. It's just a guide about how to start setting that up. Again, you're ahead of this with your committee. Next slide, please. These are some of the other things online on the Game Commission website. There's a little video. I'm doing the voiceover, which I don't necessarily like, but it's out there. We have urban deer management facts. We have lots of resources. So resources for communities, but resources for individuals as well. Next slide, please. And there's also, Cornell has put together an amazing website for communities that has everything under the sun, from example management plans to actual implementation to research. It is an amazing website. It's a lot of information. It can be really overwhelming, but it's available. Next slide, please. All this to say, there is no one solution when it comes to deer management in these areas. So you already have a hunting program, from what I understand. There are other tools that could be used as well, and I always encourage them, things like feeding bans in the community. And that is, it's important to have multiple things to address the problem, because one thing is not going to solve your problem. And I also like to equate this to road maintenance. It's an ongoing and forever process. You're never going to be done with deer management, because deer are really good at making more deer. So every year there's going to be fawns. And every year you're going to need to address it. Now, does it mean you're going to have to do the same level of effort every year? Probably not. You can probably get to more of a maintenance kind of deer management in your community, and it may look different in a year or 2 years or 3 years from now. But your plan should account for that as well. As long as you're reaching your goals, it should account for that. So next slide, please. And with that, that is all of my little spiel.